My name is Margaret Hayes, and I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to sit down and tell the world about betrayal, survival, and the kind of wisdom you only earn through heartbreak. But life has a way of humbling us, doesn't it? Sometimes it takes everything from you, piece by piece, until you're forced to look at yourself in the mirror and decide, am I going to stay broken or am I going to rise? I'm 57 now. And I'll tell you this straight, I never imagined the man I trusted most in the world would become the one who tried to destroy me. And yet, without his betrayal, I would never have discovered the strength buried deep inside me. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, because I want women like you, women who've lived, who've sacrificed, to hear me and know it is never too late to start over. For nearly 3 decades, I built a life with my husband, Thomas. He was charming, smooth-talking, and the kind of man who knew how to light up a room. To the world, he was a successful businessman, respected and admired. To me, he was supposed to be my partner, my anchor. Together we raised 2 children, Daniel, my eldest, who always carried himself with a quiet determination, and Lily, my spirited youngest, who had my stubborn streak but her father's easy smile. But behind the walls of our beautiful suburban home, there were cracks no one else could see. At first, they were little things. A late-night phone call, he said, was business. Business trips that stretched longer and longer. The way he started keeping his phone face down on the table. You know how as women, we feel things before we can prove them. That gnawing inside your gut, whispering something isn't right. I felt it, but I buried it, telling myself I was imagining things. After all, I was the wife of Thomas Hayes, the man everyone envied me for marrying. The truth came crashing down one Sunday afternoon, a day that started like any other. I'd baked a peach cobbler, his favorite, and called everyone to the table. Daniel was away at college by then, so it was just Lily, Thomas, and me. I'll never forget the way Lily stared at her father with eyes full of fire when he walked in the door. She slammed her fork down and shouted, "Why don't you just admit it, Dad? Everyone knows you're cheating on Mom." The silence that followed was deafening. My heart froze. My breath caught in my throat. Thomas laughed, a cruel, dismissive laugh, and told her she was being ridiculous. But Lily wasn't backing down. "I saw you, Dad, at the hotel. With her." And just like that, the illusion shattered. I wanted him to deny it, to at least try to fight for me, for us. Instead, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Maybe you should have taken better care of me, Margaret." Those words. They cut deeper than any knife. I was 55 years old, and in an instant, I felt invisible. I had given this man my youth, my loyalty, my entire life, and now I was being discarded like an old coat. The weeks that followed were a blur of war, humiliation, and disbelief. He moved out, straight into the arms of the other woman. A woman 20 years younger, with the kind of beauty that fades, but the kind of ambition that destroys. He left me not just with a broken heart, but with debts I didn't even know existed. Business loans in my name, credit cards maxed out. The house I thought was ours was mortgaged to the hilt. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one night. Bills spread out like vultures, my head in my hands. I thought of Daniel, who had enough on his plate with school, and Lily, who was trying to be strong but was secretly breaking inside. And I thought, I'm too old to start over. I don't have the skills. Who's going to hire a 55-year-old woman who hasn't worked in decades? But then another thought pushed through the despair. If I don't fight, we lose everything. And if I lose everything, he wins. That night, I made a choice. I wasn't going to be Thomas Hayes' victim. I was going to be Margaret Hayes' survivor, fighter, builder of my own damn life. The first step was humbling. I walked into the local diner the next morning, the same one where I'd taken my kids for pancakes when they were little, and asked the owner if he needed help. His eyes softened, but I saw the hesitation. I was older, out of shape, not exactly what you'd call staff material. But he gave me a chance, washing dishes, sweeping floors, bussing tables. It was grueling, humiliating at first. My back ached, my hands cracked from the hot water, and there were nights I cried myself to sleep from sheer exhaustion. But you know what? I also started to feel alive again. Every dollar I earned was mine. Every shift I survived was proof that I was tougher than I thought. Lily began helping me too. Picking up babysitting jobs, selling her artwork online. Slowly, we became a team. Not the family I used to picture, but a stronger, scrappier version. Then one night something happened that changed the course of my journey entirely. An older woman came into the diner, elegant in her pearls and pressed blouse. She ordered coffee, black, and a slice of pie. When I set it down, she looked me in the eye and said, "You're not meant to be scrubbing tables, dear. I can see it in you. You've got fire. What's your story?" I don't know why, but I told her everything. Maybe it was the kindness in her eyes. Maybe it was because I had no one else to confide in. When I finished, she leaned across the booth and said, "Men like your husband build empires on the backs of women like us. It's time you build your own." Her name was Carolyn Whitmore, a retired entrepreneur who had started with nothing and built a chain of successful boutiques. She offered to mentor me, to teach me how to take the scraps of my life and turn them into something new. And that was the spark that lit the fire of the woman I was about to become. If you're watching this, don't you dare let anyone tell you you're too old, too late, or too broken. Because I promise you, if I can crawl out of the ashes of betrayal and start over at 55, so can you. Stick with me. Because what happened next will show you how even the deepest betrayal can become the foundation of your greatest victory. Carolyn Whitmore entered my life like a storm, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that clears away the deadwood and forces everything to grow again. She was 72, sharp as a tack, and unapologetically direct. She didn't coddle me, didn't tell me everything would be all right. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Margaret, you've been through hell. But hell can either burn you alive or forge you into steel. Which is it going to be?" Her words hit me hard. I was still reeling, still licking my wounds from the betrayal. But deep down, I knew she was right. I couldn't spend the rest of my days scrubbing dishes in a diner. That job was a lifeline, yes, but it wasn't my destiny. Caroline started teaching me about business, things I had never even considered. "You've got skills, Margaret," she said one afternoon over coffee at her sunlit kitchen table. "You managed a household, balanced budgets, raised children, held everything together while your husband played the big shot. Don't ever underestimate that. Running a family is running a business. You just never got paid for it." She handed me books, made me take notes, even quizzed me like I was back in school. Marketing, customer service, supply chains, bookkeeping. She wanted me to understand it all. And every time I felt overwhelmed, she reminded me, one step at a time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will your new life be. At first, I didn't believe I had it in me. But Caroline pushed me in ways no one else ever had. "You're 57, Margaret. That's not old. That's seasoned. You've lived. You know, people, you understand resilience. And that, my dear, is your advantage." Her faith lit something inside me. And with Lily cheering me on, I began to think, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can rebuild. The opportunity came from the most unexpected place. One morning at the diner, a group of women came in after their yoga class, still in their colorful leggings and sipping green smoothies they'd brought in from elsewhere. They were regulars, always cheerful, always buzzing with conversation. As I cleared their plates, I overheard one of them say, "Ugh, I wish there was a place around here where we could buy healthy snacks and homemade things without driving across town." It was like a light bulb went off in my head. That night, I told Caroline about it. What if I started a small stand, selling homemade baked goods, maybe some healthy snacks? I could test the waters, see if there's interest. Caroline smiled knowingly. Now you're thinking like an entrepreneur. Start small, keep your costs low, and build from there. But do it with heart, Margaret. That's what people connect to. So I did. I started baking in my tiny kitchen, granola bars, oatmeal cookies with flaxseed muffins, sweetened with honey instead of sugar. Lily helped me design simple labels with our old printer, calling it Hayes Homemade. It was humble, but it was ours. The first Saturday, I set up a little table outside the diner. I was terrified. What if no one bought anything? What if I made a fool of myself? But within an hour, I was sold out. Those yoga ladies spread the word, and soon. People were asking me when I'd be back. It wasn't much money at first, but it was a start. More importantly, it gave me confidence. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was creating something of my own. But just as things were starting to look up, betrayal came knocking again. One evening, as I was packing up my little stand, Thomas showed up. He looked polished as ever in his tailored suit, but his eyes were colder than I remembered. "Really, Margaret?" he sneered. "Selling snacks on the sidewalk? You've gone from being the wife of Thomas Hayes to this." His words stung, but this time I didn't crumble. I straightened my shoulders and said, "Better this than being the kind of man who destroys his own family." He smirked, but I saw the flicker of surprise in his eyes. He wasn't used to me standing up to him. "I'll have you know," he said, lowering his voice, "that business you're playing at, it won't last. You'll be back begging me for help before the year is out." I wanted to laugh in his face, but instead I said, "We'll see, Thomas. We'll see." After he left, I shook with anger. But instead of letting it break me, I used it as fuel. Every insult, every sneer became motivation. If he wanted me to fail, I'd prove him wrong. With Caroline's guidance, I expanded little by little. I started selling at farmers markets, then partnered with a local yoga studio to stock my snacks. Lily set up an Instagram page, posting pictures of our muffins and cookies, and to my amazement, orders began trickling in online. But just as I began to feel steady, the rug was pulled out from under me again. One morning, I got a call from the bank. The loan Thomas had taken in my name, the one I thought I had already dealt with, was in default. He hadn't made the payments he'd promised during our separation settlement. Now, legally, I was still on the hook. The amount was staggering, more than I could ever pay with muffins and cookies. For the first time in months, I felt that crushing hopelessness return. How was I supposed to build a future when his shadow kept pulling me back into debt? I sat in Caroline's kitchen, tears streaming down my face. "I can't do this," I whispered. "It's too much. He's ruined me." Caroline reached across the table and gripped my hands. "Listen to me, Margaret. This is not the end of your story. This is the turning point. You can let him drag you down, or you can fight like hell to climb out. And I know which one you're going to choose." Her certainty gave me strength. I decided then and there, I wouldn't let Thomas's mistakes define me anymore. I would find a way no matter how impossible it seemed. What I didn't know was that the answer would come from the most unexpected ally, someone I never thought would take my side against Thomas, and that twist. That was the moment everything changed. The call came late on a Tuesday evening. I had just finished cleaning up after a long day of baking, my hands still dusted with flour, when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. I was exhausted, but something told me to pick it up. Margaret? The voice on the other end said. For a second, I froze. It was David Whitmore, Caroline's son. David and I had only met a few times, always in passing when he visited his mother. He was in his early 40s, a successful attorney with a reputation for being both sharp and relentless. To be honest, I had assumed he found me a bit of a charity case his mother had taken under her wing. Yes, I said cautiously. I heard about your situation with Thomas, he continued. Mom filled me in, and I think I can help. My heart skipped. Help? How? Let's just say Thomas has left a trail of messes in more places than just your marriage. I've come across some of his dealings before, and let's just say the man's not as untouchable as he thinks. If you're willing, I can take a look at the paperwork tied to your name. Maybe there's a way out of that lone mess. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope flicker inside me. We agreed to meet the next day at Caroline's house. When David arrived, he came armed with files, a laptop, and a nonsense attitude. He looked every bit the part of a lawyer, dark suit, silver tie, sharp eyes that missed nothing. I felt nervous, but he was calm, efficient, and surprisingly kind. All right, he said, laying out the documents I had collected. Let's see what we're dealing with. As he combed through the papers, I sat across from him, sipping coffee and trying not to wring my hands. Caroline sat nearby, watching her son with pride. After nearly an hour, David leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. Well, Margaret, it looks like Thomas outsmarted himself. I blinked. What do you mean? The loan. He tried to tie it to both your names, but he made a mistake in the filing. Legally, it can be challenged. And with the right strategy, I think we can not only get you out from under it, we might be able to hold him accountable for fraud. I nearly dropped my coffee. Fraud, you mean? He could actually face consequences. David nodded. If you're willing to fight, yes. But it won't be easy. Men like Thomas, with money and connections, they don't go down without a battle. You'll need to be ready for a fight that gets ugly. Glanced at Caroline, who gave me a firm nod. You've been through worse, Margaret. You can do this. And just like that, a new fire lit in me. For years, Thomas had treated me like I was powerless, like I couldn't survive without him. But now, I had an ally, and the chance to finally stand up not just for myself, but for every woman who had been silenced by a man like him. We began working together, David handling the legal side, me gathering evidence from years of bills, emails, and financial documents. It was grueling reopening those old wounds, but I poured myself into it. Every late night spent scanning papers was one more step toward freedom. Meanwhile, my little business continued to grow. Word spread beyond the yoga crowd, and soon local boutiques were asking if they could stock Hayes homemade products. I was working harder than ever, but for the first time in my life, it was my work, my vision. And then the first real victory came. David filed paperwork that froze Thomas's access to certain accounts while the investigation was underway. The news traveled fast, and within days, Thomas showed up at my door, livid. How dare you? He spat, his face red with fury. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You think you can challenge me? I stood tall in the doorway, my heart pounding but my voice steady. I don't think Thomas. You've taken enough from me. This time, you don't get to win. For a moment, he looked like he might explode. But then he sneered, that same arrogant look I'd seen so many times before. You'll regret this. You don't belong in my world, Margaret. You never did. And then he stormed off. I closed the door, leaned against it, and laughed. For the first time, I realized I wasn't afraid of him anymore. But Thomas wasn't done with me. Not by a long shot. A few weeks later, just as my business was starting to hit its stride, disaster struck. One morning, I arrived at the farmer's market to find my stand vandalized. My baked goods smashed, labels torn up, flowers scattered everywhere. On the table was a single note: "Quit while you still can." My stomach dropped. I knew immediately it was Thomas, or someone working for him. I called David, who told me to document everything. "This is intimidation," he said firmly. "Don't let him scare you off. The more he pushes, the clearer it becomes. He's hiding something." But I'll admit, I was shaken. I thought about giving up, about packing it all in and disappearing into some quiet corner of life. But then Lily came into the kitchen that night, looked at me with her big, hopeful eyes, and said, "Mom, you can't quit. You always tell me we're stronger than the storms. This is just another storm." Her words echoed the ones my own mother used to say. And just like that, I knew I couldn't back down. Instead of retreating, I doubled down. I poured more energy into my business, reached out to local reporters about Thomas's financial mess, and leaned harder into Caroline and David's support. Then came the twist I never saw coming. One evening, David called with urgency in his voice. "Margaret, I need you to sit down for this." Did, my heart racing. "We've uncovered something big. Thomas wasn't just reckless with money. He was laundering funds through shell companies. And here's the kicker. One of those companies was tied to people far more powerful than him. If this goes public, it could take down more than just your ex-husband." I felt my blood run cold. "Are you saying this could be dangerous?" David hesitated. "Yes, but it also means you have leverage. If Thomas thinks you might expose him, he'll scramble. And that could give us the upper hand." It was terrifying knowing I was up against something bigger than just one arrogant man. But I also knew this was my chance to finally break free, to end his hold over me once and for all. That night, as I sat on my porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, I whispered to myself, "You've survived betrayal, debt, humiliation. You can survive this too. You have to." Because I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my daughter, for Caroline, for every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough. And as scary as it was, I knew one thing for certain. Thomas Hayes had underestimated me for the last time. The real battle was only just beginning. The weeks that followed were some of the most nerve-wracking of my life. Every time the phone rang, I braced myself for bad news. Every time I stepped outside, I scanned the street, half expecting Thomas or one of his cronies to show up. But beneath the fear was a growing fire. For the first time in decades, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't shrinking. I was standing tall, even if my knees shook underneath me. David pushed forward with the case, carefully building the evidence we needed. Carolyn kept me grounded, reminding me to breathe when the weight of it all felt crushing. And Lily, oh my sweet Lily, she gave me strength just by believing in me. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, she looked up at me and said, "Mom, when this is all over, can we take a trip? Just us, somewhere with a beach." Tears stung my eyes as I kissed her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart. When this is over, we'll sit on a beach and watch the waves. And we won't think about Thomas or court or anything else." That promise carried me through the darkest days. Then came the court date. I walked into the courthouse wearing a navy blue suit Carolyn had helped me pick out. My hands trembled as I clutched my files, but my chin was high. Across the room, Thomas sat with his high-priced lawyers, smirking like the devil himself. When our eyes met, he mouthed, "You'll lose." But for once, his words didn't pierce me, because this time I wasn't alone. David laid out our case with precision. The fraudulent signatures, the shell companies, the paper trail that linked Thomas to laundering. Piece by piece, the web unraveled, and then came the moment that changed everything. David pulled out a recording, a voicemail Thomas had left in a fit of rage, admitting to manipulating the documents and laughing about how the dumb woman would never figure it out. The courtroom gasped. My heart hammered so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. The judge's face hardened. Thomas's smirk faltered. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. "Mr. Hayes," the judge said sharply, "these allegations are serious. This court will not tolerate fraud or intimidation. Pending further investigation, your assets are hereby frozen." It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Thomas jumped up, shouting about lies and conspiracies, but the bailiff ordered him to sit down. And for the first time in my life, I watched my ex-husband lose control in a place where his power meant nothing. Afterward, as we stepped outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. David shielded me as best he could. But I paused just long enough to say one thing. No woman should ever be afraid to fight for her truth. No matter how long it takes, no matter how hard it gets, your voice matters. Don't let anyone silence you. The words came from deep inside me, and the cameras captured every one. That night, back at home, I sat with Lily on the porch. She leaned against me, and we watched the fireflies dance in the dark. "Did we win?" she asked softly. I smiled. "We won the first battle. The war isn't over, but we're stronger now. And that's what matters." Over the next year, things slowly shifted. The investigation widened, pulling in others who had been complicit in Thomas's schemes. My little business blossomed, growing from a farmer's market stand into a proper bakery with a cheerful sign that read, "Hayes and Hope," the name Lily had chosen. Caroline became my partner, helping with the books and keeping me sane when orders piled high. David checked in often, sometimes more as a friend than as a lawyer. And Lily, she flourished. She even started helping decorate cupcakes after school. The scars Thomas left didn't vanish. There were nights I woke from nightmares, heart racing, certain he was at the door. There were mornings I doubted myself, wondering if I was strong enough to keep going. But then I'd look around at the bakery full of laughter, at the daughter blossoming into her own, at the friends who had become family, and I knew I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. One day I received a letter. It was from Thomas. Handwritten, shaky, bitter. "You may think you've won," it read, "but you'll never be free of me. I made you. Without me, you'd be nothing." I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and never replied. Because for the first time in my life, I understood something powerful. I didn't need to prove him wrong. I was already living the proof. The betrayal that once nearly destroyed me had become the foundation of my strength. The years of pain had sharpened me, taught me resilience, wisdom, courage, and that was the gift I wanted to share with every woman listening to my story. So, if you're watching this, hear me now. Don't let betrayal define you. Don't let the people who break your heart convince you that you're broken. You are not. You are stronger than you know. Pick up the pieces. Learn from the lessons. Build something new with the wisdom you've gained. Because survival isn't just about making it through. It's about rising from the ashes, stronger, wiser, unshakable. And if I can do it, a 57-year-old woman who once thought her life was over, then so can you. So. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what storm have you survived? Let's remind each other that we're not alone. And don't forget, subscribe, because I have so many more stories to share. Stories of women like you who refuse to let life's betrayals be the end of their story. Because the truth is, sometimes betrayal isn't the end. It's the beginning of your greatest chapter.